It didn't start with suspicion. No gut instinct, no private investigator, no lipstick on a collar or whispers from friends. It started with a fact. One single moment that split my life into before and after, and at the time I didn't even realize what I was looking at. That Friday evening had nothing special about it, at least at first. I got off work around 5:30, same as always. Long week, longer days. The kind where you don't feel like driving home in silence just to sit on the couch and stare at a TV screen, pretending it helps. Lauren and I hadn't been bad. Exactly, no screaming matches, no slam doors, but we'd been distant for a while. A slow fade, like a picture left too long in the sun. Conversations were surface level. Touch was rare. Sleep felt like a shift change. But that's marriage sometimes, right? Peaks and valleys. Anyway, instead of heading straight home, I pulled into the parking lot at Brady's. Nothing fancy. A neighborhood bar with sticky tables, decent fries, and cheap draft beer. It wasn't a place Lauren liked. She said it smelled like wet wood and regret, so I didn't expect to see anyone I knew. I figured I'd sit at the bar, zone out for an hour, maybe talk to Mitch if he was bartending. Just decompress. I was about halfway to the entrance when I saw her. She was standing at the far end of the bar in a soft maroon sweater, the one I used to compliment her in, back when she still said thank you. Her hair was tied back, a little looser than usual. Her body was turned slightly toward a man I didn't recognize. He was maybe a few inches taller than me, dark button-up rolled at the sleeves, beard too neat to be accidental. He had a glass of something brown in his hand and a smug, easy smile. The kind I used to have when I was younger and didn't care if something was off-limits. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Lauren's face. She was smiling, really smiling, laughing even. Not the quick, polite kind of laugh you give a stranger when they say something that's not that funny. This was the kind where your eyes crinkle, where your hand casually lands on the other person's arm because your body's just naturally leaning in. It was instinctive, familiar, an ** mate in a way that no married woman should look in public with a man who isn't her husband. For a second, I just stood there on the sidewalk, frozen. My first thought wasn't anger or jealousy. It was confusion. Like I'd walked into an alternate universe where everything looked normal but wasn't. I didn't approach. I didn't even walk inside. I just watched from behind the tinted window, feeling like a voyeur in my own life. Eventually, she noticed me. She looked straight at me through the glass, and her smile didn't drop. Not really. Her hand slipped off the guy's arm, but that was it. No flinch, no guilt, just a flicker of recognition, like she'd spotted a coworker at the grocery store. She raised a hand in a lazy half-wave and turned back to her drink. That moment stuck with me more than anything else that night. Not because of what she was doing, but because of what she wasn't doing. Later, when she came home, it was already dark. She walked in like nothing had happened, tossing her keys in the dish by the door and kicking off her boots. I was in the kitchen pretending to scroll through my phone, but my heart was beating loud enough to hear. She didn't say anything at first, just grabbed a bottle of water, took a long sip, and leaned against the counter. I finally broke the silence. I saw you at Brady's. She didn't miss a beat. Oh yeah, you were with someone. Some guy. Her eyes flicked up to mine. Not surprised, not defensive. Just assessing. Yeah, she said slowly, drawing out the word. I ran into a guy from work. We were just talking. Seemed like more than that. She gave me a tight smile, the kind that made me feel stupid for even asking. What did it seem like? I don't know. You were laughing, touching his arm. Looked pretty close. Jesus, Mark. She pushed off the counter and rolled her eyes. You're really going to do this? Do what? Accuse me of cheating because I talked to a guy at a bar? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. There was a long pause. I just said it looked like something more, I said quietly. She scoffed. It was just flirting. God, you act like I committed a felony. It was harmless. Was it? Yes, Mark. For the love of God. Are you really so insecure now that you can't handle me having a conversation without turning it into a federal investigation? She wasn't yelling. That was the strange part. She was calm, too calm. Like she'd had the argument already in her head and was just waiting to drop the script. "It's not just that," I said. "It's the way you looked. I haven't seen you that happy in a while." Her face shifted for the first time. Not guilt, something closer to pity. "Maybe if you weren't so cold all the time, I wouldn't need to feel that somewhere else." She said it so casually, like it was a logical conclusion. Like I was the one failing to meet a standard I didn't even know existed. And then, she walked away. Just like that. Conversation over. She left me standing in the kitchen like I was the one who had overstepped. Like I was the problem for noticing. And that's when it cracked. Not the marriage, not yet. But something in me. I replayed the night over and over in my head. Her laugh. The way she touched him. The way she looked at me when she saw I was watching. The brush off. The blame. The accusation that my exhaustion, my distance, had driven her to need attention elsewhere. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like she wasn't even scared of being found out. Like maybe she didn't care if she was. After that night, everything felt different. We still slept in the same bed. Still cooked dinner. Still texted about groceries and laundry and bills. But something about her body language changed. She was just absent. Like I was living with a ghost who still paid half the mortgage. And worst of all, she acted like I was the one who owed her something. That was the first sign. I didn't call it infidelity yet. I didn't even have the language for what I was feeling. But deep down, something had already started to die, and it wasn't just the trust. It was the version of me who believed her. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't just restlessness. It was that kind of mental buzzing that makes it impossible to lie still. Like your brain's a machine stuck in diagnostic mode, scanning every memory, every phrase, every weird little moment from the past 6 months that you didn't think twice about at the time. By 2 a.m., I had replayed the bar scene so many times it felt like a bad short film I couldn't turn off. I kept zooming in on her laugh, on that guy's smirk, on the casual way she didn't flinch when she saw me watching. And the more I thought about it, the more the context shifted. It wasn't just one moment anymore. It was a red flag waving over a field full of things I had shrugged off. That was when the memories started lining up. The short shifts that kept getting shorter, always a reason, always with that same casual tone. Someone called in sick, she had to cover, traffic was bad. It never sounded suspicious in the moment, because Lauren had a way of making lies feel boring. Just enough detail to make you feel silly for questioning it. Or her phone. Always screen down. That didn't used to be a thing. We both used to leave our phones all over the house like clutter. But now, always next to her, always face down. If I walked into a room while she was texting, the conversation would suddenly end. Sometimes she'd even angle her body away from me without realizing it. I told myself it was nothing. Everyone's private. Everyone needs space. But after the bar, it didn't feel like space. Felt like a wall. Then there was the perfume. She had started wearing something new. Not strong, not flashy. Just different. It smelled. Sharper, maybe? Brighter? I can't describe it well. But it wasn't something she wore for me. There was no big reveal. No, hey, I bought this today. Tell me what you think. Just one day she started smelling like someone I didn't know. And I only noticed because one night, maybe 3 weeks before the bar, she hugged me absent-mindedly and I flinched a little. Not because I didn't want it, but because she hadn't touched me in days. And the hug wasn't affection. It was a performance. Felt staged. Her body was stiff. Her phone buzzed while her arms were still around me, and she pulled away like I was a coat she had to shrug off. That's when I realized something else. She hadn't touched me accidentally in a long time. No brushing arms. No playful shoves. No leaning into me on the couch. The space between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical. Intentional. And then I thought about the way she talked to me. That had shifted too. She used to say my name all the time. Mark, can you pass that? Mark, you'll never believe what happened today. Hey, Mark, listen to this song. Now it was just, hey, or silence. She'd say, hey, can you grab that? Or, can you let the dog out? She used my name like it was a placeholder she didn't need anymore. She wasn't mean, that was the worst part. She was polite. Too polite. Like I was a guest in my own house. Like we were coworkers who used to be close. And when I asked her about anything, not even big stuff, just anything, she got irritated fast. "Where are you going?" Used to be a casual question. Now it was an accusation. "Why are you asking? Why does it matter? God, can I just leave without getting the third degree?" That phrase kept coming up. The third degree. I wasn't interrogating her. But maybe she heard it that way because she already knew what I didn't. I think that's when it hit me. Not the betrayal itself, I didn't have proof yet. But the feeling that I'd been living in a fog and the light was finally breaking through. All the signs were there. They'd been there for months. And I'd been too tired, too trusting, too wrapped up in routine to pay attention. I remembered back in October, when she said she had a work dinner and didn't get home until almost midnight. She said it ran late. But she didn't bring leftovers, and Lauren always brought leftovers. It was a little thing I used to tease her about, how she'd rather bring half a cold salad home than waste it. But that night, she came back empty-handed and reeking of wine she claimed she didn't drink. At the time, I didn't think about it. Or maybe I did, but I didn't let myself linger. Because the moment you really let yourself doubt your partner, something inside you shifts, and it's hard to come back from that. I guess that night at the bar was my tipping point. The next morning, I looked at her differently. She was making coffee like normal, humming to herself. Hair still messy from sleep. She looked peaceful, comfortable, like nothing had changed. And I just watched her. I watched how she didn't ask how I slept. How she didn't notice that my eyes were red or that I hadn't touched my toast. How she smiled at something on her phone but turned it face down when I looked. It wasn't what she was doing that gave her away. It was what she was no longer doing. No good morning. No kiss on the cheek. No trace of guilt. No twitch in her expression. No awareness that I was unraveling while she buttered her toast. I realized, in that moment, that she was already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally. She had left a long time ago. She was just living here out of habit. Or convenience. Or until she figured out how to exit without a scene. And maybe she thought I hadn't noticed. Maybe she believed I was still the guy too wrapped up in work and routine to see the signs. The kind of guy who would believe a lie if it was said with enough calm. But something had shifted in me. I started paying attention. That day, I scrolled through our calendar, trying to remember patterns. When had the distance started? When did the shift begin? I marked dates in my head. Little mental flags on nights she came home late or turned away from me in bed. The picture that started to form wasn't blurry anymore. It was a map. I didn't need to draw conclusions yet. I didn't need to accuse. What I needed was evidence, something real. Because she was good at this. Calm. Polished. She'd make me feel crazy if I confronted her without proof. But she couldn't rewrite everything. She couldn't erase the past few months. And the more I remembered, the more I realized. She hadn't been mine in a long time. She was someone else's. I didn't say anything to her that morning. Didn't bring up the bar. Didn't mention the look on her face. Didn't ask who he was. I didn't ask about her phone, or the perfume, or why her smile now felt like a mask. Instead, I acted like everything was fine, because something in me had shifted. I wasn't chasing explanations anymore. I was collecting data. Watching patterns, waiting for the moment when assumption became fact. She made it easy. That weekend, Lauren said she had to work an early shift on Saturday. A double, she claimed, with someone out sick and no one else to cover. "I'll be dead on my feet by the time I get back," she said. "Don't wait up." She didn't kiss me before she left. Just tossed a lazy wave over her shoulder like she was heading out to run an errand. No second glance. And I didn't stop her. Because I already knew where I was going. 2 weeks earlier, I glanced at her phone when it was face up, a rare moment, and noticed a small red location under a text preview. She had quickly turned it away, but not before I saw it. A pin dropped in a part of town we never visited. Residential. Quiet. A 20-minute drive. I hadn't thought much of it then. Could have been a client. could have been anything. But now it felt like a crack in a story that no longer held together. So that morning, after she left, I waited a full hour, then grabbed my keys and got in the car. I didn't even need GPS. The address had been burned into my memory. My hands were steady on the wheel, too steady. It was like my body already knew what it was heading toward. Like the panic had burned out and left behind something colder. Focused. The neighborhood was older. Not run down, just quiet. Rows of brick houses with manicured yards and cars parked too neatly to belong to people in chaos. I parked half a block down. K** led the engine. Didn't move. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. And then I saw her. Lauren. She wasn't in uniform. No work badge. No quick pace like someone running late. She was walking up the path to a small red brick house with a white door. Her hair was down, tucked behind one ear. She wore jeans, the ones she only pulled out when she wanted to look casually nice, and a soft green sweater, the one she used to wear on movie nights at home, the one that smelled like her shampoo. And she was smiling, not nervously, not guiltily, like she belonged there. She knocked once, then didn't wait. The door opened, and there he was, the guy from the bar. I recognized him instantly. Same beard, same overconfident posture. He leaned out, smiled wide, and kissed her. Not a peck, a full kiss. On the lips, hand on her waist like he knew every curve of it. She stepped inside, and the door shut behind her. No hesitation, no looking back. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The moment confirmed everything. Not just that she was cheating, but that she had done it before. That this wasn't new. That I wasn't watching the beginning of something, but the middle, or maybe the end. I sat there for another hour, though I don't know why. Part of me wanted to storm in and say something. Anything. Just to do something. But I didn't. Because this wasn't a movie, and I wasn't interested in giving her a dramatic scene to twist into her own narrative. I wanted clarity. I wanted to watch the lie break itself open without my help. When I finally pulled away from the curb, it was mechanical. Turn the key. Hands at 10 and 2. Pull out slow. Eyes forward. The neighborhood faded behind me. And I knew. This wasn't flirting. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a second life. And she was living it without apology. I didn't confront her. Not that day. Not the next. Not even when she came home later that evening and kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. I stood there, stiff, letting her lips brush skin that already felt detached from her. She smelled like that unfamiliar cologne again, layered under her perfume, and I knew exactly where she'd been. That was the moment I realized something important about myself. I wasn't angry in the way movies prepare you for. There was no urge to scream, no shaking hands, no desperate need to demand answers. What I felt instead was a kind of internal evacuation. Like my emotions had packed up and left without telling me. The house was still standing, the lights were on, but nobody was home. That night she talked. About work. About a coworker she found annoying. About a show she wanted to start watching together. I nodded at the right moments, answered when necessary, even laughed once when she made a joke. I could see how relaxed she was, how safe she felt. That was when it became clear. Drama would only help her. If I accused her, she'd deny it. If I showed emotion, she'd redirect it. Tears would become *P***ns. Confusion would become my fault. She'd cry about feeling trapped, about distance, about how hard things had been for her. And somehow I'd end up apologizing for discovering the truth. So instead, I chose silence. The next morning, I left early. Didn't explain. Didn't text. I drove to work, sat through meetings, answered emails, and did everything expected of me like a man on autopilot. From the outside, nothing was wrong. Inside, I had already exited the marriage. I stayed away that night, and the next. I told her I was buried at work, that I needed space. She accepted it without much pushback, which told me more than any confession ever could. A woman who's afraid of losing you doesn't let you disappear easily. Lauren let me go without resistance, because she already had somewhere else to land. During those days, I didn't destroy anything. I didn't pack bags. I didn't take photos off the walls or delete messages or change passwords. I left everything exactly as it was. The dishes, the bed, the half-finished coffee in the sink. I wanted the contrast to remain intact. Because while she was living her double life, I was preparing to end mine cleanly. I slept in a hotel the second night, nothing fancy, just quiet. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, not thinking about her with him, but about how long I'd been shrinking myself to fit into a space she'd already abandoned. How often I'd ignored my instincts because trusting her felt easier than questioning reality. By the third day, the pain had shifted into something sharper and more useful. Clarity. I knew now that I didn't need explanations. I didn't need closure in the traditional sense. Closure would come from action, from removing myself entirely from a situation designed to keep me confused and reactive. When I finally returned home, she was relieved to see me. That alone told me everything. She hugged me too tightly, asked if I was okay, said she'd been worried. I let her talk, let her fill the silence with concern she'd learned how to perform convincingly. I didn't accuse her. I didn't ask questions. I just listened. And in that listening, I realized the power had shifted. She thought she was still in control, still steering the story, still deciding what I knew and when. She didn't realize that the moment I stopped reacting, the script broke. I wasn't angry. I was done. And silence, I learned, is far more unsettling than any confrontation could ever be. I knew what I saw. I had watched her walk into that house. I had seen him kiss her. I had seen her walk through that door like she belonged there, like she'd been doing it for weeks, probably months. There wasn't a doubt left in me. But knowing and proving aren't the same thing. And if I'd learned anything over the years, from work, from life, from watching how people hide, it's that you don't go to war without your files in order. So I started gathering, quietly, carefully, like someone stacking facts into a foundation. It began with the backups. I knew Lauren had an old iCloud account tied to her iPad, one she barely used anymore. She'd logged in on our shared desktop months ago to access a document, then forgotten to log out. I never touched it before, never had a reason to, until now. I clicked the Photos tab first. There were thousands, most of them random screensh *ts, blurry food pics, receipts, work stuff. But I wasn't looking for anything obvious. I was looking for patterns. And there they were. Selfies she never posted. Outfits I never saw her wear in person. Backgrounds I didn't recognize. The timestamp on one caught my eye. A Thursday night she told me she was working late at the clinic. In the picture, she was dressed in a short black dress, standing in what looked like a hotel bathroom. The mirror behind her was fogged slightly, like someone had just taken a hot shower. She wasn't smiling in the photo, just holding her phone at an angle, one leg bent slightly. The kind of pose you don't send to your husband, but to someone who's not supposed to have it at all. I stared at it for a long time, not because of the content, but because of the tone. Casual, careless, confident, like this wasn't a risk for her, like it was routine. I dug deeper. Her location data was still partially synced to the account. Not all of it, but enough. I saw repeating addresses in parts of town she never mentioned. I matched them against dates when she claimed to be working, running errands, staying late. Over time, a pattern emerged. Thursdays, occasional Saturdays, sometimes even weekday mornings when I thought she had back-to-back meetings. I wrote everything down. Not to use against her. I wasn't planning revenge. I just needed to see it. Needed to know I wasn't losing my grip on reality. The more I found, the more detached I felt. Like I was studying the life of someone I used to know, not the person I shared a bed with. Her messages were the worst. I found old chat backups from WhatsApp. Not the full threads, but previews from notifications. Enough to read the tone. Enough to know what had been said, even if the messages were deleted now. Still thinking about yesterday. I miss your hands. Next time, leave the window open. That view. I didn't know who sent what. It didn't matter. The words alone were enough to collapse any lingering doubt. These weren't messages between friends. They weren't mistakes. They were conversations built on repetition, secrecy, and intent. And not once, did she mention my name. I wasn't part of the story. I was the obstacle she worked around. The hardest part wasn't seeing the betrayal. It was realizing how easy it had become for her. The language was so smooth, so practiced. No guilt, no hesitation. I had expected at least a little fumbling. Some trace of inner conflict. A line that had been crossed reluctantly. But that's not what I found. What I found was a woman with a second rhythm. One that had nothing to do with me. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen, reading and rereading everything I could. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just kept collecting images, locations, times. Not because I needed to convince myself anymore, but because I was trying to understand. Where had it started? Why had she stayed? Was it about passion? Was it about boredom? Was it because I'd stopped saying, "I love you," first? Or because I didn't notice when she bought new earrings? Or because I'd become predictable? It didn't matter. The reasons don't undo the choice. And the choice was made over and over again. There was a moment, maybe around 2 a.m., when I opened our wedding photos. I hadn't looked at them in years. We were so young. My tie was crooked, and her veil was falling off the side of her head. And neither of us cared because we were laughing. Genuinely laughing. I didn't recognize her face anymore. Not the woman in the pictures. Not the one who walked into another man's house like it was hers. And maybe she didn't recognize me either. Maybe the version of me she used to love had slowly vanished. Replaced by someone too quiet, too tired, too focused on routines. But I know this. I would have worked through anything. I would have listened. I would have forgiven. I wanted to grow with her. But she never gave me the chance. She didn't come to me broken. She just left. And left me behind in the same place she swore we'd build together. I backed up everything. Not to use as evidence, but for my own clarity. I stored it all on a drive, images, **TS logs, and locked it away. Out of sight. Not to dwell on, but to remind myself that this happened. That I wasn't imagining it. That I wasn't overreacting. That I had proof. Cold, undeniable, guiltless proof. After that, something in me changed. I started waking up earlier. Sharper. Like my mind had been rebooted. I stopped waiting for her to slip. I stopped hoping for some sliver of honesty to come out of her mouth. I didn't need her confession. I had the truth already. And truth, once it arrives, doesn't leave room for begging. I didn't explode. I prepared. Quietly. I met with a lawyer, opened a new account, reviewed every shared asset like a man checking for exits in a burning building. I made copies, signed documents, found a short-term lease. No one knew, not even my closest friends. But a few in her circle began noticing my distance. They sensed something, maybe in the way I no longer reacted, no longer reached. Lauren? She stayed exactly the same. Texting late, humming while making coffee, convinced I was still blind. She thought silence meant surrender. She didn't realize it was strategy. When everything was in place, I left. No note, no argument, just absence. The divorce moved fast. There was nothing to fight over. Not anymore. She tried to rewrite the story, to act like I'd given up too soon. But her version didn't matter. I wasn't chasing justice or explanations. I just wanted peace. And I found it, not in revenge, but in the quiet. In reclaiming my space. My life. My name without hers next to it.